such that it is targeting people of faith in this country and then lying about it to this committee and the American people is unimaginable. I'll be honest with you. I never thought this would happen in the United States of America. I just didn't. If you had told me 5 years ago, we'd be reading memos. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, welcome. It's great to see you again. I enjoyed our conversation in my office a while back. Let me ask you this. Is it appropriate for the Federal Bureau of Investigation to attempt to recruit spies or informants into religious institutions in this country, particularly Catholic parishes? Is that appropriate?
I don't believe so, Senator.
Mr. Patel, are you familiar with the recent actions of the FBI in this regard, including this memo that I have right here, making a list of Catholic churches and parishes that they regard as potentially suspect and directing the potential recruitment of informants and other spies, let's be honest, into those parishes?
I'm familiar with that memo, Senator.
Mr. Patel, would you commit to me that you will, if you are confirmed, that you will finally and officially withdraw this memo and make it clear that this is not only unacceptable, but that it is an absolute violation of the First Amendment that every American enjoys under the Constitution of the United States?
If I'm confirmed, Senator, yes.
Will you also commit to me that you will conduct an investigation and find out who wrote this memo, who spread this memo, the field offices involved in this memo? Because I can tell you, we've had your predecessor sit right where you're sitting, and he has repeatedly lied to, there's no other word for it, lied to this committee. He told us initially that it didn't happen, that the FBI didn't make any list of churches. That's not true. We have it. A whistleblower brought forward the list for us. He said then that only one field office had worked on it. Turns out we know from another whistleblower, multiple field offices worked on it. He said that it was never posted on the internal system. It turns out it was. We believe it's still in effect. Will you find out who was involved in this gross abuse of Americans' First Amendment rights? And will you discipline them? And if you possibly can, will you fire them, Mr. Patel, consistent with department policy and law?
Senator, you have my commitment to investigate any matters such as this one that are important to Congress. I will fully utilize, if confirmed, the investigative powers of the FBI to give you the information you require and also to hold those accountable who violated the sacred trust placed in them at the FBI.
I'm glad to hear you say that, and I'm glad you use the word sacred trust, because that's exactly what it is. The FBI is the most powerful law enforcement body in this nation, arguably the most powerful law enforcement body, at least in a free nation in the world. And to have this body corrupted politically like this, I would have said, no way, that's bad fiction. In fact, it's a horrible reality. The department needs to be cleaned up, the agency does, and rights restored and protected. I'm glad to hear you say that. Let me ask you this. Do you think it is appropriate for the FBI to be sending agents, including counterterrorism agents, to the parents of children who went to school board meetings and asked about critical race theory in their schools, asked about the school's masking policy during COVID? Should those parents be treated as domestic terrorists?
Parents who have the courage to ensure their children are taught what they feel is right, and those who have the courage of their convictions to go houses of worship, in my book, will never be domestic terrorists.
I'm delighted to hear you say that. You're familiar, I am sure, with this memorandum issued by the Attorney General, the last Attorney General, Merrick Garland, directing the FBI and other law enforcement agencies to look into parents who went to these school board meetings. And we know from whistleblowers who've come forward to this committee and given us the evidence that, in fact, the FBI opened multiple cases against multiple parents across the nation, I believe, including in my home state of Missouri. Another gross abuse, incredible political power brought to bear against everyday citizens. Why? Because they went to a school board meeting that they're paying for and asked about what their kids were being taught. Once again, I can't imagine, I couldn't have ever thought this would happen in the United States of America. Will you find out who was involved in this policy within the FBI, who agreed with it, who implemented it, who encouraged it? Will you find out that, Mr. Patel? Will you do an internal investigation? And will you make clear that those who supported this policy are appropriately disciplined? And will you make clear that the FBI will never do something like this again?
If confirmed and pursuant to your congressional request, absolutely, Senator.
Thank you. Let me ask you this. Do you think it's appropriate for the FBI to target people of faith, particularly those who hold pro-life convictions? Do you think it's appropriate for the FBI to single out and target people of faith in order to discourage the exercise of their First Amendment rights?
There can never be a targeting by law enforcement just based on their people's faiths.
And yet, under this last administration, the FBI and DOJ together brought numerous prosecutions under the FACE Act for nonviolent protests. President Trump has recently pardoned some of these folks, but it also includes individuals like Mark Houck from Philadelphia region, from Pennsylvania, who had an FBI SWAT team arrive at his door in the early hours of the morning, armed, of course, terrorizing him and his children, took him into custody. They charged him with a FACE Act violation. Why? Because he took his young son to a peaceful demonstration outside an abortion clinic. When his young son was shoved to the ground, he defended him. Mark Houck was acquitted by a jury, acquitted. Nevertheless, The FBI used their full resources, including a SWAT team, to try and terrorize him. Meanwhile, how many churches that were firebombed or pregnancy care centers that were firebombed, how many of them were protected by the last administration? Just about zero. It is an unbelievable instance of targeting. Mr. Patel, will you end this targeting? If you get to the FBI, if you are confirmed, will you end it? And will you make clear to all agency personnel that there can be no targeting on the basis of religious belief, and this will never happen again in the United States of America, at least not under your watch?
Senator, if confirmed, and it speaks to an issue we were talking about earlier, there will be no such targeting if I'm confirmed as FBI director. And the resources of the FBI, which are funded by the American taxpayer dollars, in the 7 minutes that you and I have been talking about, 2 people have died from fentanyl overdoses, 1 person has been shot to death in this country, and 3 people have been raped. The resources of the FBI will go to that mission set and that mission set alone, because America deserves a better brand of justice, and I'm going to give it to them.
Fantastic. Here's my last question for you. Do you think it's appropriate for the FBI to try and pressure the largest technology corporations in the world, the most powerful corporations in the world, social media companies, do you think it's appropriate for the FBI to pressure them to censor the political speech of everyday American citizens to try and violate the First Amendment? Is that appropriate, do you think, Mr. Patel?
No, Senator.
Will you put an end to this, Mr. Patel, if you are confirmed at the FBI?
Senator, if confirmed, I will work with Congress to expose any corrupt activities the FBI has participated in, especially involved in the censorship of free speech.
Because we know from the court cases that have been brought across this country, and we know from the voluminous factual finding that was done, and it's in the record, that the FBI and other agencies of this government under the last administration pressured, coerced these social media companies to censor speech of everyday Americans on a range of issues, from the Hunter Biden laptop to COVID to the Dobbs decision, you name it. They tried to censor them. The Constitution doesn't permit the government to do it. The FBI tried to get the social media companies to do it. Will you end this practice, Mr. Patel, once and for all?
Senator, I will always follow the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Blumenthal is next. I want to say when he's done, so let's see, that 30-minute break would make it about 12:25 or something. I expect you to be back here on time. And I'm going to have Senator Lee, I'm going to go open the Senate up now. Will you chair for me? Okay, thank you. Senator Blumenthal.
When Senator Josh Hawley leaned forward, held the memo in his hand, and asked Kash Patel point blank, "I never thought this would happen in the United States of America." This was not rhetorical escalation. This was not theater. This was not exaggeration for clip. This was a United States Senator putting into the congressional record, permanently, that the FBI attempted to recruit spies inside Catholic parishes, inside sanctuaries, inside sacred spiritual communities, inside literal sacred space. And it wasn't hypothetical. It wasn't rumor. It wasn't speculation. Hawley had the memo in his hand. He cited the whistleblowers. He cited the contradictions from the predecessor who sat in the same chair. He cited the repeated denials, and then the documented proof those denials were false. The memo existed. Multiple field offices participated. It was posted on the internal system, and Hawley said it directly. It may still be active. And as he said those words, the entire moral meaning of this hearing shifted. Because this was not a hearing about policy expression. This was hearing about the violent fracture line between the American people and the American security state. This was about the moral red line where government power is not merely wrong, but becomes dangerous. Patel said he would withdraw it if confirmed. Patel said he would investigate, but the gravity was already set. Hawley declared the truth to America. This was a gross abuse of the First Amendment. And then he layered the second parallel atrocity, parents at school board meetings being treated as domestic terrorism suspects. He said the FBI opened cases against parents in Missouri. He said whistleblowers proved this. He said the Attorney General directed investigative scrutiny into ordinary civilians asking questions about what their own children were learning. This is why his voice broke into moral shock. This is why he repeated the line twice. I never thought this would happen in the United States of America. This is not partisan rhetoric. That is a moral statement about legitimacy. Because a free people cannot remain free if their own government begins to treat religious faith, parental protection, and dissent as indicators of threat. And this moment reveals something deeper than agency abuse. It reveals the most terrifying truth. The infrastructure of the modern national security bureaucracy can be turned inward, quietly, almost invisibly, toward domestic population control. It reveals how subtle shifts inside bureaucratic mission creep transform the most powerful investigative agency in the world from protector into political weapon. Hawley called it what it is: corruption of sacred trust. Because that trust is not a metaphor. The FBI has the power to destroy lives instantly. The FBI has the power to trigger raids, to kick doors, to surveil, to classify, to intimidate, to chill speech without ever needing to charge a crime. And when Hawley described the Philadelphia father, nonviolent, taking his son to a peaceful protest, who got an FBI SWAT team at his door at dawn, that was not anecdote. That was a warning signal to every American. Due process and moral proportion can collapse instantly if bureaucracy is politicized. That is the American political singularity we are living within now. We are witnessing hearings where lawmakers must ask nominees whether they will forbid the FBI from spying inside churches, from criminalizing parents at school board meetings, from coercing social media companies to censor lawful political speech. These questions should never have to be asked. They should be unthinkable, yet they must now be asked under oath, on camera, inside the United States Senate. This is the moral battlefield of our era. You can feel the existential weight of Hawley's voice when he said he could never have imagined this 5 years ago. Because this is the irreversible line that once crossed. Society does not get to pretend it didn't happen. This is how trust is broken so deeply that future generations inherit fear as default expectation, rather than liberty as default assumption. This is how a republic begins to quietly hollow out, without explosions, without armies, without foreign invasion, but with silent bureaucratic drift inside institutions so powerful most citizens will never fully understand how they operate. And Kash Patel, in the end, spoke a sentence that defines the choice now. America deserves a better brand of justice. That is what this hearing was actually about. Not personalities, not parties, not one administration versus the next, but the question of whether justice still belongs to the people, or whether it has already been absorbed into an unaccountable internal architecture. If this country forgets moments like this, if this country grows numb to this, if these hearings become only noise instead of alarms, then the most dangerous transformation of freedom is already complete. The quiet normalization of power without transparency. The slow acceptance that surveillance directed inward is just how government works now. The cynicism that collapses outrage into resignation. That is how free societies die without ever noticing the exact moment of death. But this hearing, this exchange, this record proves the fight is not over. There are senators who will drag the truth into the light. There are whistleblowers who will risk their careers to expose what the public was never supposed to see. There are Americans who still believe that freedom is not negotiable. And there are millions who will not accept a future where church, speech, parenthood, faith, and dissent are placed inside an algorithm of suspicion. The moral meaning of this moment is simple. Liberty must never again be taken for granted. Nothing is more dangerous than forgetting that government power must always be chained to accountability. Because the moment those chains break, the moment those constraints dissolve, the moment oversight collapses, the government stops being a servant of the people and slowly becomes their judge. Remember this. Share this. Tell others this hearing mattered. Subscribe to Liberty Congress of USA.